recording this. I should have hit record a few seconds ago with the introduction, but that's okay. The main event is still to come. Today's talk with the EduScape Talk and Tour series is going to feature several landscaping alternatives that will allow us to rely on the rain alone for landscaping needs. There's no one better to cover this topic than Billy Kniffen. He has more than 30 years experience as a water resource specialist for Texas A&M. And his credentials, I gotta tell you, are so vast that rather than sit here and list them, I really, really urge you to go online and Google him. You'll be amazed with what this man has done in his lifetime. His influence is felt not just here in the Hill Country, not just Texas, but across the United States and internationally as well. I, fondly refer to him if anybody says, Billy Kniffen, and I say, oh yeah, he's the rainwater harvest guru, so he's the go-to man as far as I'm concerned. Billy doesn't just lecture, he walks the talk. I mean, he and his wife live in Menard in a home solely dependent on rainwater. So before I turn it over to Billy Kniffen, let's just go over just a couple housekeeping rules, not rules, but just details. Down at the bottom, you can click chat and type in questions that you may have during the presentation. We're not going to stop and go over those at that time, but it's just a nice kind of placeholder for you to remember that question, because at the end, we will go ahead and we'll unmute everybody and we'll do a more informal question and answer session. So that chat, though, is kind of a nice, just a reminder. Again, the program is being recorded. So if you've missed something or, you're coming in late or what have you, we will have this up at Riverside Nature Center's webpage in the next couple days. So, and I will also usually go ahead and send out a link to that via email. So watch your emails and you'll get a link for that. So also, when Billy is done, if you wish to stay online, I'm going to be conducting a virtual tour of the EduScape, and directly after Billy's talk. So that's all that I have to say. So I'm going to click out of here, and I'm going to turn this program over to the gentleman of the hour, Billy Kniffen.
All right, thank you, and I appreciate the introduction. It's amazing for a country boy to get to do the things that I've done, excuse me, over the years with Extension Service, putting in demonstrations and doing talks across the state of Texas and with American Rainwater Catchment Systems Association as their education coordinator and eventually vice president. I didn't want the president's job. Then I got to travel all across the United States, training individuals to put in systems and then training trainers as well. So it's been great. But in that process, going and doing lots of work in New Mexico, I've been really impressed with how they appreciate what rainfall that they get, and the landscaping reflects that. And then they've put together a program called Roof Reliant Landscaping. There's a number of individuals that's really championed that, and the engineer for the state of New Mexico put in the introduction, says the New Mexico Office of the State Engineer supports the wise and efficient use of the state's water resources and therefore encourages the harvesting, collection, and use of rainwater from residential and commercial roofs, surfaces for on-site landscape irrigation, and other on-site domestic uses. And as I look at their work, I wanted to bring that same philosophy, that thought to the state of Texas. And so we too will manage our rainfall much better than what maybe we have done in the past, taking many things for advantage of what water we have. And so it's going to be very difficult to increase our supply of water. As we look at even climate conditions that are changing, rainfall continues seem to be less and less. And so we're not going to be able to meet the same water that we have now. And so it's going to have to figure out, as our population grows, people continue to move in, seal over the land, that we've got to figure out how to reduce that demand of water that we have here. And so the cheapest water that you'll ever have is the water that you already have. That may sound simple, but the fact is it's going to be expensive. It's expensive for San Antonio, Austin, and the other large cities to gain enough water to meet their water needs. And so they had to really put in efforts to reduce that demand. And so we too have to do that, especially in the hill country, because we appreciate those springs and those rivers and the lakes that we have around us. I pulled up the drought monitor from this last Thursday, and looking across the nation, much of it is in a situation of limited rainfall for this year, and much of the area, especially in the western United States, is getting into some severe drought conditions. And as we look into Texas, and this is from a year ago, and we look straight up and down through the state, we were dry a year ago, but if we look at it this year, it's just enhanced. And as we look to the west, then we see that there are some severe drought situations that are taking place. Today, I saw that 80% of the state is abnormally dry for then agriculture use or then for all of our needs. So it's not a good time right now, but it's a time to really to reflect on the water that we have. Benjamin Franklin said a long time ago, when the well, and I would include springs, rivers, and our aquifers, when they run dry, we will really know the worth of water. And I don't want to ever get to that point, but I want us to recognize the value of water before we ever get there. This is a picture of our house a year ago, or a little over a year ago, the spring. Last year, the winter and spring was very nice, and my landscaping reflects what the conditions are. And so we had a beautiful spring, lots of color in our landscape. Looking from the other side, that we just see the flowers that are giving us all the beauty and color and all of the needs for pollinators, for all of the different wildlife and birds that depend on those seeds then for their survival. But if we look at what it looks like today, it's a different color. And I think we have to appreciate that brown is also a color that our landscapes have to live with, especially if we want to consider rainfall and let it then give us then that different color. And so for us at our house, we get our color out of a few special plants right in our back patio area that then attract and then give us in the butterflies and the hummingbirds and the bees and the wasps that come and to enjoy the nectar that's there. And our beauty comes in from the birds that we give water to, and the hummingbirds that we see then darting around us and almost right through us as they're chasing each other. But they give us in the beauty that nature really reflects the season that we are in. And so as we start looking at roof reliant landscaping, that may be broken down into two sections. One, what we'd say totally roof reliant landscaping, and that's much of what you saw in my front yard. That in the season, we're going to have the flowers. If we get the rains in the summer, we're going to have the grasses that are going to grow, buffalo grass, curly mesquite, and others that's going to be in there. And then if we don't, then it's going to be brown. And so I depend then specifically on just a few plants then to give me that color and to provide for our wildlife. but more of us are probably going to be in what we'd call primarily roof reliant landscaping. That's where I may be using supplemental water, especially then to take care of plants to get them established over the first several years. And then gradually shift then to water that I may capture into storage containers, storage tanks, and then to apply to those plants then during those times that it's really extremely dry, to keep them alive, or then to give them a little extra boost so they give us the color that we want. And then as they get established, then we can reduce that over time so that we're less dependent then on then supplemental water from our aquifer, from our wells, from our municipal water supply. And so as we start looking at that roof reliant landscape in there, we've got to have a water efficient landscape. That's one that does not require very much. And then we got to look at ways that we can keep what rainfall that falls on our landscape and off of our roof and keep as much of it as possible there on our place. And so that's where we will look then at different ways that we can design our land so that it holds that water back, keeps it there on site to allow it to infiltrate. And then what comes off of our roof that we can put it into storage containers and then save it for those times that we really need it. So it's a combination of those three things that's going to make then our roof reliant landscaping then practical for us. We've got to understand then how to design that landscape. That means the amount of slope that we have, the soil depth, and the rockiness that may be there that then will allow water to infiltrate, what plants will actually grow in those places, and then figure out how to slow that water down, put the plants where they really need to be, and then look hard at ways to make sure we keep all that water on our place as much as we can. And that it looks as well where our storage container may be, and we'll talk about that at the end of this program. But the design and everything before we ever put that first plant in its place. And then just as critical is understanding the xeriscape situation, the plants that need to go there, and figure out really what nature would want to be in that place before we start in our plan. So all of these things needed to be done in preparation before we then take off in the process. And that's where I think that Kerrville especially has really a unique place for you to learn from, where there's going to be the Riverside Nature Center, where the virtual tour is going to be from the Upper Guadalupe River Authority. And I think then from your master gardeners, master naturalists, that you can help you then with native plants or then adapted plants that will work in your area. And then going to your certified professionals that really can give you that advice that's going to be more than maybe what we get from some of our box stores, but to help us in that design as well as in the plants that will work for us. Then I think if you can take those tours and go to different botanical gardens around the area and see what you really like, get ideas of different types of landscaping, other hard features, hardscapes that may not need water, but also can then shed to give water to them for your landscaping as well. So all of those things that may be what we want to do. If you're in a hurry, you can do this, but hopefully not too many of you are that impatient that we would like to get our color and our landscape that's going to reflect us, and maybe this one does, but we will do better than that, I think, as we look at then designing and then putting in that landscape. And so I think we've got to do it in time. Give me that time to, and to maybe require help in designing that landscape plan. Put it in my hardscape, put it in my walkways, put it in special water or features there that may then add to the beauty, where there's going to be large boulders, other things that may be there that can help then reduce the amount of area that you actually have to put plants in. And then after that, then start putting those in and get those in place, and then figure out how that water is going to shed off of each one of those to make sure that we get and keep that water on that site. And then also look at that storage container, where it's going to be so that it fits then into our landscaping so that we can get the water to the plants that need that. So looking at our drip irrigation lines and where that they will fit and not be distracted, but then get the water to the plants that need it. And then giving us time there that we're going to get dry years and wet years that we may need that supplemental water to meet the needs to get those plants established. But then in time, then hopefully that we can turn it over to the rain to be our primary way that we're going to water those plants. I'd like to show you one example. This is up in Junction, just west of Kerrville, up the road. This is a landscape, what's called landscaping of hopes and dreams. Mrs. Roberts was one of the teachers there that took her students outside the classroom, and she was an English teacher and had them then really write about what they saw, about the plants that are there and the things that are in nature. She passed away from a cancer, and then her co-teachers, former students and students, then wanted to build a memorial for her. And so this garden is what that reflects. And so this is the front of the school where she taught there for many years. It was designed to nothing else to shed the water off of that roof, get it into the street as quick as it can, and not really give back to the school. Those rocks just add to the heat that was there, sort of hard to walk through as students would get from one side to the other side. And so as we design this and look at how we can use those rocks and see how we can make then a path then for our students to work with, then we come up with this, and we shifted those rocks as a way that they can hold water back. And then make then that gravel then a pathway for the students to be able to walk through that would be much easier, much more enjoyable for them. And then on the right side, you see then some couple of yellow arrows, and that represents then some small rain gardens. There are downspouts on that building that shed the water off of it. We want to then capture some of that water and then allow it to overflow into then the next rain garden, the one that's be on the farthest on the right, and then hold as much water as we can before then it leaves and then gradually then gets into then the street. And so from the other end as well, that you can see that there's a couple of small rain gardens that are there, catching from the downspouts. And then there we put the plants in that like that little extra water. And in between, you can see there's lots of mulch that's there, and put the plants in that can then live off of the rainfall alone. Rather than, there's no drip irrigation in this. Yes, there is. There was some drip irrigation in to establish those plants. That has since been taken away since those plants have become established. But we use that then that little bit of supplemental water to get them established. Then you can see over time, those students have to walk down this path, and there's going to be butterflies, and there's going to be then birds and hummingbirds, and there's going to be the smell that nature gives those students. And so they get to appreciate and then enjoy what nature has for them. And I think that's a true testament to that Ms. Roberts that was so instrumental in getting this landscape then established. And so there are things we can do. And you can see even there on the right, the rocks, there is a sitting area. And I've seen students there visiting with each other there in times. And so it becomes then a much more enjoyable place to stay rather than to just try to get across. Canada has same concerns that maybe we do, and that they put in together a program called peeling back the pavement, because they're putting in so much roads, streets, rooftops, parking areas that shed much, much more of that water and allow much less of that water to infiltrate. And so I think we can also take that and then look at then maybe peeling back the turf then to allow more water to infiltrate, add more beauty then to our landscape, and make it more then giving rather than taking. This is one that I work with some college students in Abilene. In the front is what that landscape looked like the year before that we started with some of the students that were environmental science. And so we have changed that landscape from this into this here. And in that process, there's rain gardens that are there. We had the students in capturing water off of every downspout off of that building, putting in a path that they could walk through, and then put in plants in that reflect that. It's not the right season to give you the most beauty that that landscape has to offer, but it's one that is over time. Some of the students says it's the greenest landscape on that school's campus. And so we put in 5 rain barrels, 2 rain gardens, 1 pocket prairie. Now, a pocket prairie is basically a rain garden, but in the back where all of that parking area goes, we've channeled that water into a much larger rain garden and put strictly the native plants that were actually there originally back into that landscape. And so it reflects in the prairie situation, and then the plants then in that prairie or that rain garden like then help to infiltrate much more of that water back into the ground. We also have water for wildlife. We have a keyhole garden for to grow the vegetables there. Then taking the cuttings, we have compost bins for them. Put in that permeable walkway there. Rather than having it out of concrete, we have it then in gravel or in decomposed granite to allow water to infiltrate. They put in then a handicapped garden bed for then others to be able to use, and then try to put in native and adapted perennials there that don't require then constant planting into place. And so it's one that we can use in as an example. I like a quote that Aldo Leopold said many years ago, that land is a community, is a basic concept of ecology, but that land is to be loved and respected is an extension of ethics. And I think our landscapes, front yard and our backyard, too, is that reflection of the ethics that we feel ourselves. And so I want us to think from that concept of what this land looked like before the houses, before the city of Kerrville and the other cities in our hill country were here. Much of this land was in different blue stems. Some of these early pioneers says it was a sea of grass up to the belly of their horse as they traveled across this country 150 years ago and before. And so we've got to learn they are what then created the springs and filled the aquifers and created the rivers that flows through our hill country area and across the state. And so I like to say that nature's first rain catchers are those grasses that was here. One on the left, yellow Indian grass, little blue stem, really the most dominant grass in our country then for thousands of years. And then state grass of Texas on the right, Cytosgrama. And these are grasses there that are deep rooted. This is a demonstration that was done in Oklahoma at the National Grasslands Preserve. And so they put on the right, then they planted wheat. Then on the left is part of that grassland prairie there that's been there for thousands of years. And so they cut away then so that you could see the roots of these plants. This annual grass you see on the right, those roots just go down about 6 inches. So they're totally dependent on what rain comes there that season. And if we don't get it, they're going to die. But look at then the plants on the left. These are the grasses, and they go deeper, and that gentleman is tall. And so there's so much of that vegetation that's below the surface that help then, as we look at the tops of those plants, capture that water, allow it to slowly then move away, or then more likely to go down into the ground. And you see there's much more carbon in those plants down below ground than what we see above ground. And these roots are constantly dying and replacing themselves. And as they do that, then the roots of these plants, the one on the left, the switchgrass, you can see as those roots might die and decay, they really become a straw to allow water to infiltrate and move down. The one on the right is in Indian grass, and you'll see that it then is that massive mop head of a root system that goes deep, deep, deep into the ground, and it allows water to infiltrate, to recharge your aquifer, to take care of those plants themselves without supplemental water. And so the same is true for many of our forbs that are then native to our area. These perennials have that massive root system that is tough, that goes way down. And so even under the dry conditions, in a dry spring, you may see then cutleaf daisy, then or Lindheimer's daisy, then blooming when everything around it is brown, because they depend on that deep moisture, and those roots then are able then to give then that plant the moisture that it needs to give us the color. And so I guess the question is your landscape a giver or is it a taker? And so I want it to be a giver. I want it to be then one that's going to capture water. It's going to provide then food for our wildlife. Gives beauty for us as well. And so it's a giving back to nature what we want it to do. And so all it takes is just the right tools. We got to have then the training. We got to use then experts. We got to look at then what works in our region and then apply them to our landscape. And so we begin with really looking at the soils. And as we look at then from the river's edge, and then as we go uphill, then there's different soils that are there, different depths of those soils that will allow different types of plants to grow there. And so as we look at that, then that's going to help us make a decision on how fast water will infiltrate, how much will infiltrate, what plants really can survive in those locations. And so that's the beginning part before we ever start doing anything. And then figure out how we can slow that water down. We see on the left there that if we allow it to come straight off of our roof, go down our downspout, it's going to shoot down to the lowest area, and oftentimes that is the street, and it's just going to move away. And so just after that rain, then all that water is gone. We didn't get use of it. We actually then just create then more storm water and carrying away more of our sediment, maybe even some of our pollution, and combining that then with others, then we're putting that straight into our river rather than allowing it to infiltrate, recharge our aquifer, and to take care of our plants. So our goal there is on the right then, so that we can figure out how to slow that water down. Give it a chance then to get back into the ground and have much less of that water run off. And so I think that's sort of our goal in all this process. This has come from a book from Brad Lancaster out in Arizona. And me and him, we worked together a number of times, and he is really an outstanding individual from looking at then water and water management at his home, in his community, and his influence across the world. But he looks at the picture on the left here. Too many of us put up mounds and put our plants on top of it, and then create ways to get that water off of our house, get it into the street as fast as it can, and so that our landscape has to be then doctored and then resuscitated by municipal water. And so the one on the right is one that's going to be taking that same water, changing our landscape, having that water move in to feed that landscape and plants, and getting more of that water even off of our sidewalk. And even in his area and in the gardens, I'll show you in a minute, getting that water off of the streets and maybe even bringing it into our landscape. So that it is one that allows more water to infiltrate as well as take care of our plants with much, much less supplemental water from some other sources there. And so as we look at that, then the rain gardens, and this is just an ideal of one that coming off that downspout, put in our plants that I really want in that rain garden so that that gives me the color, and then it keeps that water and allows it to infiltrate. And in different locations, it may be a lot prettier in areas that get more rainfall than especially I do where I live, but all of those can be done. I like to work with a gentleman there from Kansas City. They put in an effort to put in 10,000 rain gardens. It says to engage citizens in practical backyard solutions for water quality improvement. And theirs was a 3.5-year initiative with the goals of putting in 10,000 rain gardens in Kansas City and having that water stay there rather than run off into the Mississippi River that's there. Same effort was done over in California in an area there that I've got to teach in, amazed with the people and their mindset of really taking care of our natural resources as well. And so that's something we too can implement with our roof reliant landscaping. So this is our example here that we have in Menard. This is a school teacher too that passed away. Her family then wanted to put in a garden to represent her influence on not only the library, but her work in Menard County. And so their efforts then help us to put in this garden that is there. And so we begin the same way as I asked you to do, to look at the place, look at then the slope, looking at the hardscape, designing our landscape. And so here we are looking at the pavilion we're going to put in, that we're going to capture water off of, trying to remove the river rubble, also then designing everything. The bottom left is showing where we're going to put in some raised beds so that people can learn how to not only then enjoy nature, but also then be able to garden in the process. And so that's our beginning. As just I want you to do the same with your landscape, seeing how it can be changed, where the water goes whenever it rains, and seeing how I can then slow that water down and then change my landscape to reflect that. So this is it. After then we put in then the hardscapes, we put in our walkways, put in our raised beds, then start putting in the plants that's there. And then we put in a drip irrigation as well to get these plants established in the process. And so then some of our community people have got their gardens, and some of these are junior master gardeners as well. And so as we go through the summer, you can see that it really reflects then giving back to then the people in our community. Our junior master gardeners put in then the scarecrows to reflect the things that and we want to make it enjoyable for them to be able to do. And so as you see that there's not that many plants that are there, and so we have to be patient in time, knowing what their final size is going to be as they grow and mature, and then try to take them, help them to get to that point. And so this is what it has turned into now 10 years later in that garden area. And so the plants then are giving us beauty throughout the year. And so there's those that are going to bloom in the spring, some in the summer, some in the fall to provide. Then we're also then using the water off that roof to provide then for wildlife and for birds that are then coming to that garden. And then we're putting in rain gardens. And so this is one that we're bringing water in off of this street and then to put into this. And you'll see there's in the background there, this yellow Indian grass. There's others that are in there that then are giving us then beauty. and then also then helping to move that water down into the ground. Then off on the other side, here's another rain garden that we then, where the street had dropped down, we channeled that water and brought it into a much larger rain garden. And so with it, then we've added then roses on the right side. And so you'll see them. The picture now then looking at on the left side of that then hoop is getting next to the rain garden. The one on the right side is only getting a little bit of drip irrigation. So that rain garden really has fed those roses and time to really give them that extra boost that they need then to give us that nice then covering for those plants. Then we have a 1,000-gallon collection tank in the back then that supports some of our plants, as well as that wildlife watering device. You see in the foreground some of those plants that are blooming as well. There's also then a dry stream bed that's right through the center of this. There's slope that moves really from the top of the picture down to the bottom. And I want to make sure that goes and channels into a third rain garden. And so it gives us that different then hardscape, an appearance then of the hill country, and then the plants then give us that beauty to go along with it. And so we've had lots of students that have gone through there, enjoyed it. And so I've made a few little designs or created critters to reflect the season, the time that butterflies, the students are out there catching and identifying butterflies out of there. So just make it enjoyable. And that's what I want our landscape to be, something that's going to give back not only to then the aquifer, but also to us as well. And so I want to sort of shift then to capturing the water off of that roof. And it's something that is extremely important, I think, because we get rainfall much more than what our landscape can get it into the ground as hard as it rains in our area. And so as we start looking at that, first is just trying to figure out how much rain actually comes off of that roof. And many of you already know, but I'll put some numbers in here. For every 1 square foot of roof, when it rains 1 inch, that's approximately 6/10 of a gallon of water that's going to run off of your roof. And so if you have a 2,000 square foot roof, rains 1 inch, that's 6/10 of a gallon of water. So 2,000 times 0.6 is 1,200 gallons of water with a 1 inch rain on a 2,000 square foot roof. And so on a dry year, you're going to get 25 inches of rainfall. Some years you're going to get on up into 30, 35. Hopefully you won't get much lower than 20 inches in a year. But if we say just a 25-inch rainfall year, that's 30,000 gallons of water that's going to come off your roof. And then you start figuring your landscape and start adding that water as well. There is a massive amount of water that falls off of our yards, off of our roof every time it rains. And so we can either capture that water or we can allow it to run off. And so I want it to be that during those times that it's raining, I want you to have your buckets out there, if nothing else, and be able to catch that water off of that roof. And then that'll make you say that I got to get something bigger. And so that we then say that our rain barrel is our gateway drug to rainwater harvesting. That means that barrel is going to fill up very quickly. And then I say, well, I got to have another one. And then it's another one. And then it's another one. And so today there are a number of different then products. There's a number of different then designs of systems that will help us capture that water. And say, I have no gutters. And so this is with our students there at Abilene that we then built this water trough, then to channel water into one of these rain barrels. And then it overflows and goes into the other. It's also tied together at the bottom. Then the one at the right goes into a water feature, then for wildlife, then to take care of those needs. That little old dripper then provides water for a few plants that are around it to then give safety to the birds that will come to that then site there. So just because you say I have no gutters, that's no excuse. I want you to capture that water and save it then for those times. But you say, I don't want my rain barrel to be right next to my building or right next to my house. The picture on the right, on the left is in what we call a dry system. That's where that rain barrel or that storage tank's going to be real close to that building. The water's going to then just drain straight off of that roof, would run right into that storage tank, and then when the rain is over, it's going to then drain dry. And so it has to be real close to that building, but then it's easy then to maintain. But the one on the right is one that we'd call a wet line. And that's where the water in this system then allows me to move that storage tank to the backyard under a tree. For us, it's put it inside of our barn so that you cannot even see it. And so the water will go down. The weight of that water is going to then push it through that pipe and then back up and inside that storage tank. There's calculations that we can do to see what size of pipe is needed based upon then the size of that roof and how far your storage tank is going to be away from that building. And so as you look at that, it's easy to put it then in a location where it may be more conducive to right where I want it to be for my landscaping, or then for the water features that I may have, or then for then watering wildlife or birds in that process. And so it doesn't have to be next to your building, say, I don't want it there, I want to move it away. And so we can easily do that. And there are then easy calculations that help us to do that, to make that determination. And so I'd like to have a drain on that, especially there in hard winters. It might then keep some of this pipe from freezing, although in my area, that pipe never has frozen as of yet. But I want to make sure that it's protected then from trash and debris to fall in it. And that's real critical. The most important part in rainwater collection systems is making sure that I don't get these leaves and debris and trash and all of that into my storage tank. Because if I get too much of it, it's going to start rotting. And as it decays, then it then takes oxygen from that water and starts deteriorating the quality of that water. And so our raw water becomes anaerobic. And the bacteria that live in anaerobic conditions are the unhealthy, or then the bacteria that really will make us sick, as well as other things sick. That's more what we'd call septic water. And so I want to keep as much of this out as I can in that process. And so even in a rain barrel, I can use a 1 gallon jug and then put that into, put a screen in the bottom of it, put gravel in it, and then let my then storage water run through it before it gets into that storage tank. But there's lots of different designs and products that are out there on the market, whether you buy them through the internet, go and get them from some of our stores. There are those now that really then try to cater to those that are wanting to put in rainwater systems and provide those products for you. And so I'd encourage you to go and support them. But there are ways that I can keep then all of these things from helping getting that debris out of the tank. So this is a screen basket. This is one that, excuse me, close to Dallas, where is in the bottom of the tank, water would go through. The top left was in the fall, where then crickets and ground beetles come to the lights, and there's one that's above this building. And as they go to that, they got a rain and it washed them into that, but it kept them out of the storage tank. Bottom right is just in the catkins and leaves from live oaks in the spring as they shed those and keep those out. Every spring I get calls where then the water is being crystal clear, then all of a sudden it turns brown, maybe even have a smell to it. And in every case, it's been because of the live oaks or the pecans trees that's been in that area that have fallen on the roof and then gone into that storage tank. And so I want to keep those out, and that's where that screen is very critical. And it also is critical then keeping those mosquitoes out. And that's what I want us to do. And so as we start looking at then using that water, I want to use it as efficiently as I can. Drip irrigation is going to be the most effective way to get it into where the roots are of that plant. So there's going to be much less evaporation in the process. And then I want to provide that rainwater then for my wildlife. Give me that color, and it gives back then beauty then, and then to take care of nature. And so you see that this wildlife water then, there's a mockingbird, our state bird, there's a brown-headed cowbird, then there's another one that's on the right there. I believe that's supposed to be a Scots oriole, but its picture's covered up and I forgot what it is. But they will come to that. And then we also, at our house, right next to the house on our deck or on our porch, this is a 1-gallon jug. And we'll fill it up every morning and put a drip emitter into the bottom of it. And it's going to drip then about a drop a second. And if it does that, then that 1-gallon jug is going to provide then for wildlife, for birds then all day long. And I'm amazed at then the number as well as the variety of species of birds that are coming to our water right now with the dry heat that we're having here. And so it's another way to use a little bit of that water without too much, but it gives so much back to then to the birds and then to the wildlife and to the bees and others that are there to us. I want to finish started with our house that we have. Again, looking at our landscape on the left, there's just, it is a total Reliant landscaping that I'm depending totally off of the rainfall to give me the beauty. If it doesn't, it gives me the brown beauty, and then I can shift then that water to other locations. I grow lots of rocks that are there, and so there are only then those pockets that we've made then so I can then water those plants that are there. I have the water feature that's there to then gives me the sound, and then also then attracts then wildlife and the birds to our area that we have this there. And so I like for nature to come in, and I like for those plants to be there that maybe then not so desirable for the deer, but I want them to come to our place as well as all the other wildlife that we have. And that's looking out my kitchen window. My storage tanks are in the barn. I have 3,000 square foot of the roof, and it runs down underground about then nearly 40 yards and then rises back up, goes into the top of these tanks inside of our barn. And so we have then around 3,000 gallons, around 5,000 gallons of storage. We capture about 3,000 gallons for every inch of rainfall. With what we use at our house, we use around 19 gallons of water per day inside of our house per person. And so with what we have, we can live off of less than 5 inches of rainfall a year inside of our house. And then as we use water outside, we use almost the same amount. And so I would like to have at least 7 inches of rainfall a year. And certainly I would like to get more so that our then landscape then reflects the beauty of the rainfall for us from year in and then year out. So I'd like to close with what has been said by Santa Fe County. This is an ordinance that they have. Santa Fe County, New Mexico was the first municipality in the United States to create an ordinance requiring any new structure 2,500 square feet or more to have a rain harvesting system. And this ordinance applies to both commercial and residential projects, with commercial projects requiring higher percentage of total capture as well as larger storage reservoirs. I'd like to pull that from New Mexico and put it in the state of Texas as well. Because when I see water in that storage tank, then I understand where that water came from and how precious that it is. And so I like to end with Teddy Roosevelt's statement, says a nation behaves well if it treats their natural resources as an asset, which you must turn over to the next generation, increase and not impaired in value. And so the things that we do are going to reflect on generations to come. And how we take care of our natural resources, especially our water, is going to reflect whether that river continues to flow, whether those springs are still then pumping water into it and the aquifers are going to take care of us. Or if we are going to see that time that we're going to be trying to steal or take water from others, or we're going to be under such restrictions that we have then passed that stage of no return. So there's other resources besides what you have there local. Texas A&M University, there's a rainwater harvesting.tamu.edu that has publications and videos that are there. The American Rainwater Catchment System Association, there's lots of information that is there that they're trying to provide, as well as training for those that would like to install systems. And then I would encourage you to go to the Texas Water Development Board. They are one of our pioneers in helping the state of Texas then get to the point where we are really looking at water as a precious commodity rather than just another commodity that we have that's here. So with that, I thank you for the time and appreciate that you looking virtually on this. I hope there are those clouds that are in the background for each one of us each week, especially right now with the drought that we have. So with that, I thank you. And I guess that this time we would see if there's any questions from any of you.
All right, well, thank you, Billy. I think that's fantastic. Let's go ahead and if anybody has a question, please feel free to unmute your mic at this time, and we'll go ahead and answer your questions. Nope. Billy, you want to go ahead and stop sharing for a sec?
Okay. With that, I thank everyone, and you're certainly welcome to contact me. The Riverside Nature Center has my contact information. Be glad to take then emails or text if I don't get you on the phone. And with that, thank you for your time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Billy. All right. So again, just offering up an opportunity to ask a few questions. All right. So at this time, we can move into our virtual tour of the EduScape. And I am going to just share my screen real quick. All right. Okay, here we go. This is just a reminder that today's talk was just the one of three more sessions September sessions that we have lined up. On the 15th, we're going to be talking with Travis Fluhop, local business owner of Beyond Irrigation, and he's going to take us through some best management practices. And then towards the end of the month, we'll be hosting Dr. Becky Bowling from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Services, and she's going to be talking about soil management. So we have this information available on riversidenaturecenter.org, and you can register for any or all of the programs. So our virtual tour, UGRA EduScape. So as I mentioned earlier, This project all began with a need to correct some major major erosion, I'm sorry, not irrigation, but erosion runoff and issues around the UGRA building. Creating a landscape was important, and the aesthetics were taken into account, of course, but the main thing was that this landscape needed a purpose. It needed to be, designed as an educational tool, hence the name EduScape. And so within this redesigned landscape, we're going to find that there's about 15 different storm water detention and water conservation practices demonstrated. And this is kind of a neat idea because it's balancing two extremes that urban environments, especially here in Texas, often experience, and that's drought and flood. So based on the average rainfall over 1 year, it's estimated that this particular landscape now can absorb about 1 million gallons of rainwater. So one real advantage of doing this virtually is if we get to see some before and after pictures. So I'm just going to go through real quick, showing you what the UGRA landscape looked like prior and what it looks like today. So here we are at the entrance of the building, and then now parking lot, putting in some more xeriscaping. Over to the side off the entrance, main entrance, and now we get to see some terracing, your traditional boxwoods. Now back along Lehman Drive on the back side of the building, just a monoculture of turf, and now we're seeing some actual landscaping. Again, the back side entrance, and terracing and more plantings. And then this leads us to the entrance into the parking lot. So combination of these 15 different practices that you see, we're going to go through, probably is not typical of something that you're going to find in anyone's home or even in their business landscape. So it's got to just remember it's a demonstration, and we're putting in a lot of different techniques for that educational experience. So our first stop, welcome sign. And we're going to find, as we go through this tour, that there's 10 different interpretive signs, and each one kind of highlighting a different technique. So next interpretive sign that we come up to is, of course, some information about the Guadalupe River, and that just makes sense, being a landscape from Upper Guadalupe River Authority. And this is just demonstrating our unique relationship with the river. I mean, with Western Kerr County being the headwaters of the Guadalupe, and so we're at a real unique situation. I mean, it's an intersection of geology and topography that's responsible for that flow of the river, and so we rely pretty heavily on the river for many things, recreation, water supply, and of course our aquatic life. So here, right to the side, we're going to see a little waterfall. That's aesthetically pleasing and everything, but it's also a teaching tool. It's showing us how water is pushing up through the rock formations and then finding its way out as seeps and springs. So the formation of many of our waterways here in Kerr County. So moving right along, as we go around the bend from that Guadalupe River sign, we're going to be right in front of a 30,000 gallon rainwater harvesting system. This is water that is collected and drained off about half of the UGRA building roof line, which is about 10,000 square feet. So this water is only used for landscape purposes. It's not considered, potable or for drinking. Again, I think, Billy, I mean, he has all of these techniques in the talk that we just went through. And so, he pointed out the fact that, rainwater harvesting can be done on a very small scale, or it can be done on a real grand scale. So as we move up along this walkway, we're going to find, something that's, maybe a little more applicable to, a small garden use, and not, trying to irrigate a whole, large landscape. Again, interpretive sign that's talking a little bit about why collect rainwater. I do want to remind you that these signs, there's a lot of really good information on there. I'm kind of flipping through them fast. If you go to ugra.org and go to their major initiatives, you're going to find the EduScape. And you can see these interpretive signs and read them at your leisure, as well as other information that they have there that we're not going to present right at this moment. So we're moving on from the water tanks along this pathway, and it is has been planted with native grasses. There's some two different kinds of muleys and little blue stem here. I can't say it any better than from those gorgeous photos that Billy shared with us, with the extensive root system that our native grasses provide, which sucks that water straight down and allows some great infiltration. So this is demonstrating that concept. So we move along, and we're going from a crushed granite walkway now to some pavers. We're going to talk a little bit about, why we're doing these transitions in the walkway when we get up around the corner. But just mark that these pavers are non-mortared. So we talked about a smaller rainwater harvesting system. So as we move up along the walkway, you're going to see just to the corner of the shed, just peeking out, is a little 55-gallon rain drum with a rain chain that's attached to it. So, this system, it's going to collect a small amount of rain, but it may be just enough that you need to hand water. Or you can even, rig up a pump to it. But oftentimes, gravity fed, if you have a spigot and use a hose, it's going to be sufficient. So moving to the next interpretive sign, I think this is our fourth sign, is about Texas wildflowers. And so again, beauty, of course, aesthetics, it's bringing in color, just like Billy had talked about, but it's also providing habitat, and it's providing, food for many insects and also other pollinators. So not to mention that wildflowers, again, deep rooted, so it's helping with that water infiltration. So we have here is the wildflower garden or pollinator garden that is maintained by the Hill Country Master Naturalists. And as you can see, numerous plantings with mulch laid all around the plantings. Just some more pictures of this. And there's pollinator plants, all throughout the landscape. So this particular garden has been qualified as a Monarch Way Station. It also is a certified wildlife habitat because it's providing the 3 necessary: food, water, and shelter. And the entire program with the EduScape did win this prestigious award in 2018 from the Texas Water Development Board as a Texas Rain Catcher Award. So kudos to UGRA for that. So now we're going up to our fifth interpretive sign. Again, we had mentioned, some of the walkways that we were virtually strolling upon. And it's important to note that they're all considered pervious surfaces. So what do I mean by pervious? It's allowing rain to infiltrate, down. So the crushed granite, the non-mortared pavers, and now you've got turf stones, turf pavers. The master gardeners and the landscaping committee at UGRA chose to place gravel in between these rather than using some kind of planting, which is great. I mean, it's still allowing the water to infiltrate, and it's aesthetically pleasing as well. So, you don't have to think of just a concrete walkway as being, the only source that you have available. I think Billy made the comment in his talk about peeling back the pavement. And so, this is a prime example. You've got the hardscape with the road right there. Why, continue that if you can have just a little bit of, extend that buffer. And so peeling back the pavement and allowing some pervious landscaping in the area. Plants. There's, probably over 70 different species of plants planted throughout the landscape. There may even be more by now. And each one has a little label. So, as you're strolling through, you can, bone up on your plant identification by looking at the labels. As well as those, you will find throughout the landscape water conservation tips in little signs. I think there's probably over 20 of these signs. So just a little heads up, nice information throughout the landscape. So we come around the curve and we're walking along the back end of the UGRA building along Lehman Drive. And what you may not be able to see from this photo is that the landscape and everything, there's about a 20-foot drop in this topography. And so rain and runoff and everything, was just originally coming down and just crashing down into the back end of the building. So using some different techniques, it's allowing, using the rocks and terracing, and then we're going to talk about all of this gravel along the edifice of the building. It's a dry creek bed, and so all of this is helping to slow down that rampant run down that slope. So dry creek bed. Number 6 in our interpretive signs, talking about what they're doing, the controlling runoff and such. And they're within the EduScape, the dry creek beds. What they're doing is that they're funneling or channeling excess water down to 3 different rain gardens that have been designed within the landscape. So you're seeing here again, dry creek bed, allowing that to go underneath the walkway. So it's a little bridge, and it will eventually dump that water, that runoff, into a rain garden. This is what we're talking about. This was in May of 2019. We had, real super quick downpour. It's hard to design a landscape that's going to absorb kind of an abnormal, water big downpour like this, because it doesn't happen that often in our area. But unfortunately, even with all of the mitigation, factors and everything that have been employed in this landscape, it's still, something this hard and this heavy, is going to kind of overwhelm. And you can see, that there was some standing water and such. And again, you know, just showing that. But, you know, it served its purpose. It did what it needed to do. It was just kind of, you know, the capacity was just a little overstrong for that particular time. So moving back up into what we're looking about, you know, we got off the turf stone pavers, and now we're back on a crushed granite. But this is last year with the new plantings, and then now you can see what it's looking like this summer. So quite a bit of growth, and you know, and as you know, any garden, you know, Billy had even mentioned, you know, it looked bare before, but you didn't want to overcrowd. You've got to allow for the plants, you know, to have room to grow and fill in. And so in just that short, you know, 1 year, one growing season, this is what we're seeing. So it's fantastic. Just some more plantings and greenery and color in the landscape. So this is probably the hottest, driest part of the whole landscape. But you know, take advantage of that. You know, the big old Spanish dagger back in the back has been there for years and years and years, and has survived, you know, well. And so they've put in a trellis with some coral honeysuckle, and then you see, you know, just kind of eye candy, you know, in this container that's not a live plant. But we'll hold that thought, because we'll talk about that in just a second. So now, talking about lawns, you know, most people when they talk about lawns and turf, they're going, oh, you know, they're water thirsty. They're just, you know, then you think of a monoculture of just a straight lawn and everything. You know, here they have actually put in 4 different turf plots, one with St. Augustine, and then Bermuda, buffalo grass, and zoysia. All of these being, you know, in different graduated levels, being water conservative type turfs, some better than others. But what's important to realize is, and here you can see one of the turf plots as well, is that you shouldn't think that your landscape has to be, you know, turf less. If you want to walk outside, you want to put your toes in the grass, you know, you want your grandkids to be able to roll around and things, a place for your dog. I mean, yeah, sure, let's go ahead but be conscious about what types of grasses and turf that, you know, you choose. And let's not plant the entire yard, you know, in it. Small plots mixed in with your hardscapes and rain gardens and stuff, you know, perfectly all right to do that. Again, showing the different turf here, but also, again, another different walkway. It's a crushed granite, but they've put big flagstones in there, and that was not only to make it kind of interesting, but this, you can't really appreciate it, but this is on a slope and it's going down into the parking lot, and sometimes crushed granite's very difficult to keep where you want it, so putting in these big pavers, you know, helped with that. So I think this is our 8th interpretive sign along the way, and it's talked about condensate collection. If you're not familiar with that, that's collecting the water from your air conditioning systems. And UGRA has cleverly tied in a 3,000 gallon tank into their rooftop air conditioning systems in order to collect that condensate. That water then can be used as part of their irrigation plan. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but over at Peterson Regional Medical Center, they've got 3 huge condensate storage units, and they're producing probably about 400,000 gallons of water per year just from their air conditioners. You know how cold it is in a hospital. But, and they're not the only ones. The Kroc Center also collects their condensate, and they're able to collect about 2,500 gallons a day during the heat of the summer. In doing that. And that's the beauty of the condensate, is when you need that water the most is usually during the hottest part of the season. And that's when you're running your air conditioner as well. So again, sort of like the rain harvesting, you don't have to have a big Mac Daddy kind of system. You can collect condensate just off your home in a 5-gallon bucket. You know, you're going to have to be, emptying that often, but this is something that's relatively easy to do, and just really smart. So you may consider using this kind of technique. So talking about rain gardens, Billy, had gorgeous examples of rain gardens and what they can do in mitigating, runoff into the roads and things like that, or, as he showed us, diverting road water up into the garden. I thought that was pretty ingenious. So right outside, next to the tank that we're collecting our condensate from, is a rain garden. And the water from the backside, you saw that dry creek bed that's running along the back part of the building. That's channeling water down into this depression, into the rain garden. Thing about rain gardens, again, it's just important to pick your plants and just make sure that these are plants that don't mind having their roots really wet for a period of time and then drying back out. So we've got Cenizo, we've got some inland sea oats, mealy blue sage, and things like that available in this particular rain garden. You probably wouldn't want to choose something like a Blackfoot daisy that hates to have its feet wet, so that wouldn't do well. So you can ask nurseries, call Master Gardens, call Riverside Nature Center, any of us, and we can help you with your plant selection on that. So coming up to xeriscaping, our last interpretive sign. People sometimes erroneously say xeroscape instead of xeriscape, and xeriscaping is far from being zero. You may have in your mind the idea that it's just rocks, and cactus, but everything that we're showing you today and in the EduScape is an element of a xeriscape. It's just, using water wisely and water saving principles. So one thing I said, keep in mind when I sit back in that little corner with that funny little metal cactus by the Spanish dagger, you can do this. If you need a pop of color and everything is, just dry, no reason not to use artificial and metal kind of yard art for a little eye candy. So typical xeriscaping, using the rocks and cacti or yuccas and things of that nature, but note that, you can get a visual interest by using different sizes of your rocks, mix it up so it's not just all the same. So this is where the boxwoods were coming around the corner to the front of the building, and those were removed, and kind of an example of container gardening. These are Camellia plants, and just planted in a row. So beautiful antique rose garden. Now, mind you, this is protected behind a gate, so the deer in the area don't have access to it, or it probably wouldn't look like this. But this is just a nice little kind of zen area of the landscape. So along the front entrance, showing you again, the growth in one season, and we're looking at the top part of a terrace. You know, the water's coming down, what isn't collected in the downspouts and taken to the storage tanks, you know, it's hitting this first. So this is, you know, where the first raindrop falls, you know, and so good plantings, you know, deep rooted, but this is what they're planted on top of, is a gabion wall. This is a picture from last year when it was first installed. I just love this feature. I think, you know, it's just so organic. It allows, you know, the water to infiltrate down into the soil, but yet it can also seep out, and it's slowing it down dramatically before it hits that next level. So here you can see from last year to this year, and the plantings are starting to, you know, pretty much hide the gabion wall. I kind of like it, you know, showing bits and pieces showing, because I think it's kind of cool looking. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of the landscape. The numbers are showing the different interpretive signs that we just went through with the 10 of them, but it's showing where the water, you know, is coming down. We talked about a 20-foot slope on the landscape, so you can see where, you know, the water is running. But the main issue is this area here. And you can see the water coming down and going into this back corner and then leaving the property. So in order to remedy that issue, UGRA, the master gardeners, as well as it was a real community effort, as well as the Kerr County, all got involved with putting in a rain garden and a bioswale, which is pretty much a dry creek bed, but all along here to try to collect that water as a last effort before it went off the property and into, you know, the backside of these other businesses. So I said, again, you know, partnership with Kerr County, who dug the trench for this project. And then Travis Fluhop, who I said at the very beginning of the program is going to be our next speaker on the 15th. His company came in and filled up the trench with layers of gravel, and then sand and soil, and then mulch on top of that. So you can see on your left the dry creek bed, and then at the end of that is a rain garden. The plantings are just, you know, new, just going through, you know, the first growing season. So I imagine that this time next year it'll be, you know, pretty spectacular. So that's all that we have today, and I thank you again for joining us with our EduScape Talk and Tour series. And if anybody has any questions, I'm, you know, happy to entertain them. Just unmute yourself and okay. Well, no questions today, and that's okay. I do urge you to, you know, virtual tour is one thing, but to actually go 125 Lehman Drive here in Kerrville and stroll through the EduScape on your own. You know, it's, as I said, fantastic demonstration of all kinds of different techniques, and hopefully you'll choose one or more to implement into your own landscape. I will be sending out an email to each of you with some links, and also a little survey after the fact to see how you liked our programming. So thank you one and all for joining us today. And I thank Billy Kniffen once again. Fantastic. I never bore of listening to you. And so we will see you on the 15th. Thanks, folks.